here I am months later to tell you that you're all wrong. Hey, it's Allie, welcome and welcome back to my channel. Banger after banger after banger of indie games came out this year, but there was nothing quite like Mouthwashing. For those of you uninitiated, Mouthwashing is a psychological horror game in the PSX style that deals with the crash of a spaceship freighter in the distant future. This game follows Jimmy as he deals with his new position as captain, as the old one is, incapacitated.
Don't you give up, nah, nah, nah. I won't give up, nah, nah, nah. Let me love you.
Now, I will not lie to you, when I first started playing the game, it did take me a couple of tries to really understand what is going on, hence the nature of psychological horror games that have a lot more metaphorical things going on than literal. However, after watching other people play it a couple of times, things slowly started to click in my head until I got the bigger picture. And at that point, I thought it was pretty obvious what is going on in the game. However, some people seem to have missed the point completely and has gone completely over their heads. And looking back on it, I can definitely see how some people might have missed the point of the game. So, in what is very clearly a sorry attempt of just me wanting to talk about this game, I want to take you through Mouthwashing today and talk about how some people are clearly missing the point. And hey, if at any time you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe because I make videos like this all the time. And I would say comment down below your favorite character, but it's Daisuke, right? Let's jump into it.
Why can't I be you?
Mouthwashing follows 5 characters stuck on a spaceship freighter called Topar, which is hauling, you guessed it, mouthwash, for a very cartoony corporate, morally questionable, probably corrupt company called the Pony Express. And then all of a sudden, the ship mysteriously crashes, leaving Curly, the captain, completely disfigured beyond repair. Jimmy, our main protagonist, takes over as captain. What a go-getter. And the game is mostly through his eyes and perspective as he tries to keep the crew alive long enough for somebody out there in the depths of space to come find them and rescue them. Now, this game is presented through a split narrative, which is where some people might have already been losing the plot, going back and forth between things that happened before the crash and the subsequent lead up to it, and the present where things are figuratively and literally falling apart. Jimmy makes a horrible set of decisions that leads to pretty much the death of every single person on the crew. And we as the audience find out that not only was Jimmy actually the one who crashed the ship and not Curly, as he had been suggesting this entire time, making him an unreliable narrator, but also, and I think we are further enough into this video that I can say it, Jimmy sexually assaulted Anya. This results in her pregnancy. Then she gathers up the courage to tell Curly, the boss, and Curly has a very soft ass conversation with Jimmy, and Jimmy freaks out and crashes out, both figuratively and literally. And also semi-important except mega important, which I will slightly touch on later, they are all about to also lose their jobs. We'll get to that part later as well. And this is where I think some people have originally lost the point. Now, some people, myself included, in the beginning really didn't understand what actually happened to Anya during this game. Now, I have seen some arguments online about whether or not this should have been outrightly stated or not. It's a psychological horror game, so I would say no, as things tend to be a lot more metaphorical in this. I will say though, one of the things that made me kind of write off Anya, or just like what had happened to her at my very first playthrough, was because Anya just stopped showing up in the narrative in the latter half of the game. And this is not just because she dies at, I think she's like the first one to go. So it's not just because she was like the first one to die and we do not see her for the rest of the game. Now, I do think her disappearance was intentional because we learned very obviously later that Jimmy does not at all care for Anya. He does not respect her as a human being. He stripped her autonomy away from her, and we see that paralleled with Curly later. And he only ever feels remorse for what he did to Curly and not what he did to Anya. And so I think that maybe people needed to sit with the narrative a little bit longer, or if you thought it was one thing and it turned out to be another, that's fine. But getting on the internet and trying to basically deny what is blatantly in your face, even though you like, do you need to have it spelled out for you word for word? I don't think you need to. However, I think some people just don't like to be wrong on the internet, and especially when something that you thought was, oh, this was the narrative of the story, ends up being something completely different. You feel a little bit embarrassed, but instead of just detracting, deleting your comment, people are getting into fights for literally no reason. And it's not because of the devs not being able to spell it out for you, it's because of your lack of reading comprehension. But that is okay. I'm here for you. I'm here. Towards the end of the game, 2 interesting things happen. Now, whether it's because of the lack of oxygen, the guilt, or the mouthwash, Jimmy starts to see really crazy things, like a giant baby boom in the middle of the ship that is a puzzle that you have to like scan things for to find the baby inside of it. And considering the state of America right now, God, where is Luffy when you need him? You know, I know how to cook. Luffy, I know how to cook. Please save us. I think that it's very topical that inside of Jimmy's mind, this all being some type of like manifestation of it, that we never see Anya, but we do see the baby, almost as if he cares more about that thing. No offense to the baby. No, more about that thing than Anya. I think that it's very topical that instead of caring about the woman that he raped, he cares more about his consequences for it. And secondly, when everything starts to fall apart in Jimmy's mind and that starts to leak into the quote unquote real world, we do get to see him take, well, responsibility and feel remorse. And I'm putting that in quotes, of course. The mascot of the Pony Express, which looks very interestingly like a donkey instead of a pony. And I feel like there's some type of symbolism there that you could like gleam out, but like I'm not gonna do that right now, but like I feel like we could, comes to Jimmy in his mind and is like, hey, so this is kind of a shit show. Jimmy's like, yeah, man, I feel so bad. And the mascot is like, oh, you feel bad? Are you apologizing for the things that you've done? And he's just like, yeah, I'm so sorry, Curly. And the mascot goes, oh, you think this is still about him? And so in that way, it does make sense narratively that Anya never shows up for the rest of the game. Jimmy just simply does not care about her. And this is stated pretty obviously if you're like paying attention. Like I said earlier, Jimmy is an unreliable narrator. Everything that we see is through his perspective, except for the very few moments that is through Curly's perspective. We'll get to that later as well. Don't you worry. Curly ain't getting off the hook either. And because of this, Anya never shows up in Jimmy's mind because he just simply does not care about her. He kills himself at the end of the game, thinking himself a hero because he saved Curly. Again, we don't even know if Curly made it out okay in the end. And also, we never get to hear about his remorse over killing Swansea or for getting Daisuke killed, or of course, what he did to Anya. So in that way, I can see how somebody might be confused about what's going on because honestly, the narrative is hitting you over and over and over in the head about Jimmy being remorseful for what he did to Curly. Every time we see them talk to each other, Jimmy is always saying about like, oh man, you were right. Dang, this captain thing is really, really hard. And the flashbacks that we see with Jimmy and Curly are talking about them feeling stagnant in their lives. We'll get to that later as well, don't worry. And about wanting to make it out of here. And so in that way, we see all of this as a Jimmy and Curly like type of conflict. And Anya has taken a large backseat because we are seeing this through Jimmy's eyes and Jimmy does not care about Anya. Now I will say, I do think though, it is a legit criticism to say that Anya still should have haunted the narrative, and I agree with that point. I think that maybe she should still be there, even if she's like way in the back as a shadowy figure that you only see for like half a second and you turn and she's not there. Something like that to show that he is not getting away with this. And either like mentally or physically or like whatever, just some type of way to show that Anya still haunts the narrative. And you can say that was the baby, but the baby is not her. The baby is the baby. You know, two separate beings here. I know they are in one body right now, but they are two separate beings. Like, even though Jimmy doesn't feel any actual remorse, Anya should be in the back of his head like a dead pixel in the same way that he was in the back of Anya's head constantly. But I understand the devs have to wrap up a very complicated, spinning, unreliable narrators are always hard to like end properly because it's like, are you supposed to feel bad for me? Like, clearly you're not supposed to feel bad for Jimmy in this case, but it's like, you're still come away with that feeling because as much as people want to think they're free thinkers, as soon as you are told in the story how to feel about something, you have to actively fight against it to not feel that way. I think it is very obvious in Berlizzi's playthrough of this game, which I loved by the way, where he is on Jimmy's side completely in the beginning. Like, he is like, everybody's a freak on here, I'm the only normal one type of like shit. And then when Jimmy yells at Anya that Anya, like, you should be a nurse, aren't you a nurse, blah blah blah, when she is too shaken to take care of Curly and she's rightfully so scared, I and Berlizzi and a lot of people were like, yeah, girl, you're a nurse. Like, let's get it together. Like, I know dire straits, but like, please, can we get it together? Only to then realize later in the game why she was shaken up, and also that it was pretty rational for her to be shaken up like that. That he is an asshole and probably should apologize, which he was never going to do. Seeing Berlizzi go through that and my own feelings of that as well was like, oh, like, because the narrative told you to feel this way, you started to feel that way. And you have to actively fight against that. You have to like turn on your neurons and really get them firing to actively fight against what the unreliable narrator, protagonist, and now antagonist is telling you in this case. And it's really hard to make a like satisfying ending in that way. Now, of course, in my favorite AU called The Voices in My Head, Curly does end up surviving and has to live with everything that he did because Curly failed.
Disability is not punishment, nor is it karma, which is why I find it profoundly upsetting whenever people interpret what ultimately winds up happening to Curly under this light, when the game itself never does such. Because punishment implies deliberate intent, and karma implies the audience is supposed to feel some form of catharsis or satisfaction. Curly's maiming is meant to physically reflect the suffering that he imparts on the most vulnerable member of his crew. He robs her of a voice, so he has none. He subjects her to a dangerous and violent man that he soon has to grow to rely on. It's tragically ironic, but just because it's tragically ironic doesn't mean this is something the game implies you should derive pleasure from. It's meant to invoke terror, and not because of the physical appearance of Curly's disfigurements themselves, but rather because they showcase the way that becoming disfigured completely dehumanizes you in the eyes of both your peers and the audience. You should be horrified by the complete lack of dignity and personal autonomy Curly is extended, and you should be even more horrified when you realize this directly parallels what Anya has already gone through. The instant that Curly becomes heavily burned, he loses his personhood. He is reduced to an incomprehensible and inconvenient inanimate object. In the eyes of his abuser, he becomes a burdensome thing the abuser then assumes he can do whatever he wishes with. Which again is a direct reference to the way that Jimmy grows to regard Anya after he discovers her pregnancy. There is this constant debate surrounding whether or not Curly deserves his disfigurement, and the answer is obviously no, but that's not the question you should walk away with. Because the big question that's being asked here isn't whether or not any one member of the crew deserves the suffering that's being inflicted upon them by their abuser. It's asking the audience if they realize the severity of what happens when they allow unchecked abuse to run rampant. Asking if they too are willing to take responsibility for the Jimmys they encounter in day-to-day life.
Now, out of everything else, I think that this is the biggest point that people tend to miss. I think that, like, people being told that, like, yes, Jimmy raped Anya isn't too far-fetched of something for people to believe, and if you just go back and re-watch or replay the game, then you will understand that. But I think this point about Curly is heavily missed because it's more about what Curly didn't do rather than what he did. And also because Curly is now a victim of extreme violence by Jimmy. But make no mistake, Curly did fail as a captain, as a friend, and as a man. It was Curly's job to protect everyone on that ship, and it was his job as captain and a friend and a man to make sure that Anya had the support that she needed. Curly is very, very indicative of rape culture and everything wrong with it. And the way that people treat perpetrators when they are friends, co-workers, or just having some type of positive relationship with them. And this is exacerbated when we see the world through Curly's eyes, and Curly is still flabbergasted that he would ever do such a thing. Like, he is shocked. Now, it's okay to be shocked that, like, you didn't know this person wasn't capable of violence, but once you are told that, and you believe it, it's not like Curly didn't believe Anya, he absolutely 100% believed it. Once you are told that, I feel like a flip should be switched, but instead, Curly had a conversation with Jimmy akin to all of the other conversations they had been having before. Like, Curly does not see Jimmy as this violent person that he is. In fact, the audience also, at least me, I also did not see that until Anya asked for the gun. And we realized then in that moment that she is not asking for the gun to off herself. She is asking for the gun to protect herself. And it is at that point, and the conversation about the dead pixel, that we learn that Jimmy is capable of immense violence. And him crashing the ship over something like that is honestly not too far-fetched. And of course, the dramatic irony of it all, when now Curly is at the behest, gets his autonomy stripped away by Jimmy, who abuses him. You know, all those noises of him, like, choking on his pills isn't because he just can't swallow. I mean, it probably is that too, but it's also just because Jimmy is literally shoving them down his throat. The entire idea of, I hope this hurts, is because he wants to hurt Curly. I think the dead pixel conversation is one of the biggest pieces of evidence, and funnily enough, another dramatic irony moment that both the audience and people who miss the point of the game and miss the point of Curly's failure is this conversation. And I feel like a lot of people either weren't paying attention to the conversation or were like Curly in this conversation and just really not getting it at all.
You doing okay?
Yeah. Can't sleep.
Oh yeah, I know how that is. I just toss and turn or stare at the ceiling all night.
I actually kind of like the nighttime window screen, if you can believe it. So I just come look at it sometimes. If you look really, really close, you can see there's a dead pixel in the upper right corner.
That's so? No, don't see it.
In the back of my mind, it's always there.
And I'll go bonkers looking for it. Cheers. Yeah, I don't think it ruins the illusion, though. It's peaceful. But, Maybe I'm just used to looking at the bigger picture.
How many days of transport do we have left?
Let's see. Off the top of my head, around 237 days. This is just under...
8 months. Hey, why do you think Pony Express put a lock on the medical room door but not in the sleeping quarters?
I suppose for the same reason they put a lock on the cockpit. Safety.
Like, Curly only really makes the effort to find this dead pixel in the screen for like half a second. He's just like, no, I don't really see that. Okay. Again, not in a way that he is disbelieving that it's there, but that he doesn't want to do the work to see it. And this is punctuated when Anya asks Curly how much longer they have until this shipment, this run is finished, and she already knows the answer. She cuts Curly off and she's like, 8 months. Yeah, I know. Like, she already did the math. She already knows. Like, 8 months is a very poignant time, is it not? Like, and Curly still cannot put 2 and 2 together in that moment until he is outrightly told by Anya later on. And then, of course, she asks why there's not, first of all, yes, why are there not locks on the bedrooms, but there are locks in the med bay and the captain's bay, which is funny. It's really like, oh my god, it's funny in like, not in a haha way, but funny in an ironic way, because we see later what happens to Curly. The fact that like, he's like, the same reason why there's a lock on the cockpit, for safety. Yeah? And you don't think people would, and that is so indicative of rape culture, because it's like, again, it's not like Curly could have done really anything about it. He doesn't own this Topler, like he does not own the Pony Express or any part of it, so he cannot really change any of these things. But he doesn't think about why there should be locks on the bedroom doors. Why don't you think there should be locks on the bedroom doors? It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, everything should be like this. I read a book once. This is a little bit off topic, but I read a book once, and it was about a sports team. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It's called the Foxhole Court series. You should read it. You should read it. You should read it. But in that, one of the things is like, everybody's broken, everybody's battered, everybody has like a story that they went through, right? And the boys' locker room used to not have doors on the stalls or the showers. Like, why? Why are there no doors on the showers in the boys' locker room? You would not think that, and it's because of this like patriarchal, not think, like very highly like patriarchal and misogynist and like not caring about men in any type of way, to not think about like, why would we ever need locks or doors on bathroom stalls in the men's locker room? Like, men don't deserve privacy? Like, what? And in this way, with this, Curly does not think about the fact of why someone would want a lock on the bedroom door, because he's not thinking about the possibility of safety. He says it outright. He's like, oh yeah, safety. That's why we have locks on these doors. That's why we have locks on the bedroom door. He can think about somebody possibly using medicine for bad. He could think about possibly someone doing something crazy like crashing the ship, but he cannot, for the life of him, until it is dead ass spelled out for him, think about somebody doing something wrong in the sleeping quarters. It is the best conversation of the game. The dialogue in this game is so good. Pause. Now, I saw a really good note on TikTok. Someone mentioned that even if Curly did a little bit more, there wasn't much he could do because of his job circumstances. And I kind of brush over it in this video, the capitalism hellscape of it all that is the Pony Express. So sound off in the comments, because there's much to discuss about that, but like, I just didn't have time to really go into it because that could be an entire video on its own. But really, I wanted to focus on the fact that Curly never saw Jimmy as dangerous in the first place, such as, like, the first red flag that Curly really should have saw this coming is when he was having a conversation with Jimmy about feeling stagnant in his life, confiding in somebody who he thinks is a friend, feeling stagnant about his life, wondering if there's more to what it is, which, side note, I think it's really interesting that he says that, because it kind of adds to a little bit of world building about the Pony Express and how the Pony Express is probably this all-encompassing, really evil company, and I would love to see more of that later, because it really seems like, especially when we find out that the crew is gonna get laid off, that it's gonna be hard to find work elsewhere, because yeah, being laid off sucks, but the way that everybody reacted, they're like I may not be able to find another type of job type of reaction, you know? So like, maybe the Pony Express is like one of those futuristic all-encompassing companies. It's like, if you lose this job, it's gonna be very hard to get another job anywhere else. But Jimmy gets upset in this moment, and you might feel like on Jimmy's side again, because it's from his perspective, to the point where Jimmy brings it up later when Curly tells them that they're going to be laid off once this shipment is done. However, once you think about it a little bit, Jimmy's insane jealousy of Curly is completely unwarranted. He is wrong at the wrong person. situation. Again, with the whole capitalism thing that I don't have time to get into in this video, he's mad at the wrong person. Why is he mad at Curly? Curly is literally trying to tell you, in not so many words, that you looking up to him is fine and you looking up to his position is fine. And it's understandable that maybe you might be a little bit jealous or annoyed that somebody in the position that you want to be in a higher position than you is telling you that they kind of aren't satisfied with their life. It's okay to originally and knee-jerk reaction be a little bit upset, a little bit jealous over that. But if you think about it for longer than 2 seconds, what Jimmy doesn't seem to be able to do, you would understand that, like, oh, maybe that job, maybe that position isn't what it's cracked up to be. And maybe I should be thinking a little bit bigger or higher than that. But Jimmy can't because Jimmy's a fucking loser. And he let his ego and his anger get in the way of ever seeing the bigger picture. And right then is when Curly should have stated some really strong boundaries. But instead, I would say that Curly ended up pitying Jimmy in a way that really didn't help the situation at all. However, I do love Curly as like a person though, and I do wish we got to see more of him interact with every one of the other crew, because he does seem kind of like that kind of like dad, but not in the same way that like Swansea is dad, you know? Anyway, Berlizzi said it best.
That's what I was trying to tell you, nothing more. We're the ones you're trying to escape. Leave the dirt behind now that your boots are clean. Nigga, are you my husband? Are you my son? Are you Aurelie? Are you my boss? Are you a grown-ass man with a pair of dick and balls just like me trying to figure it out, bro? How old is this guy? He has to be at least late 30s, bro. And Curly over here really giving this dude the time of day. I would have said, go to your quarters, bitch. I'm still the captain. And take Swansea and the cake with you, bro, and fight to the death, because that nigga's hungry, bro.
So lastly, I wanted to talk about the fandom.
Give me the name of a Mexican dish that ends with Ito. Dorito. What? Good answer, nephew.
Now, I personally love all of the memes going around. I think they're hilarious. However, some people are being a little bit critical of just how much of like memes and jokes are being spread around about this game. I will say this though, I have not ever seen a meme that was based off of the things that happened to Anya or the actual narrative of the game. Most of the memes have been, if not all of them, for the most part, the ones that I've seen, have been literally just crew shenanigans, being on a ship together, like, let's pretend none of this ever happened type of way, which is pretty par for the course for fandoms like these, where the narrative itself is like so devastating that you have to completely make up a new scenario in your head in order for the characters to have any sense of happiness. It happens more often than you think. So I can see if that was the case, if people were making fun of and making jokes about specific situations like Anya's situation, then yeah, we would have an issue. But all of the memes have been really about Daisuke. He's like the main character of these memes because he is like our age, like the main demographic of people who are like watching and playing this game. He's like around our age. And while I cannot relate to Daisuke in the sense that like I don't have a rich mother and my rich mother did not give me an internship at all, I can relate to the idea of not knowing where you're going with your life and wanting to have something to prove. And so because of that, Daisuke has become a baby darling, sunshine boy, love him. And I do think a part of this is also, you know, making your internet experience tailored to you. I really am kind of tired of people saying that like, oh, I'm tired of seeing all these insert meme here about this thing here. And it's like, girly, you could change that, you know? You could say, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear about this. I don't want to hear this song as it relates to mouthwashing or anything like that. If you only want to engage with, and this is okay, if you only want to engage with the more somber and realistic aspects of this fandom, meaning people who do critical analysis, people who do more critical analysis fan art and stuff like that, that is okay. That's totally fine. You don't want to engage with any of the memes, that's fine. You have to do the work because it's your phone, your app. You have to do the work to make sure that you do not see that stuff. For example, I'm really into One Piece, but I don't give a shit about power scaling. I don't see any power scaling stuff on my timeline. I only ever see Freak Yaoi on my timeline, okay? And that's what I want. That's what I come here for. And so if I have done the work to mute certain words, to make sure I'm not following certain people, to absolutely make sure that I'm not seeing that on my timeline. And for the most part, I don't, unless I go into the general tag of something on like Twitter or TikTok or whatever. I'm usually not going to see that content on my like For You page. Remember, it's a For You page. Now, however, I will say that due to its rising popularity, I do understand the generalness that fandoms can kind of take on, and the generalness of like the nuances of the game getting flattened a little bit as stuff starts to rise in general popularity. And mouthwashing definitely isn't the only thing to do this. If you ask like the average person what the plot of Scream is and what the like narrative takeaway from Scream the movie is, Would they be able to tell you? No, probably not, unless they've like actually watched the movie. You'd be surprised how many people can contribute to fandom without actually watching its source material, or B, actually paid attention to more than just the funny or scary parts of that movie. And honestly, that just happens. It's an unfortunate thing that happens, and that's why we still have to push these critical things like this video and other people talking about it in a critical way, because those are the things that like keep the conversation around this grounded, if you know what I mean. That doesn't mean we also cannot have, though, the crazy funny memes of Daisuke dancing to Nasty Girl. But please also understand that we can do both. Just because you see somebody making VR chat Daisuke memes of him twerking and dancing in front of Curly's half-dead corpse does not mean that they also do not understand the gravity of the actual source material. Like, people can say Daisuke is a nasty girl while also understanding the abuse and trauma that everybody went through at the hands of Jamie. And also, maybe this part is a hot take, but I do like seeing videos, especially with Anya and Daisuke, because I do feel like Anya didn't get enough of just being a girl. She didn't just get enough of like just being a human being and being on her own and not being her trauma and all this stuff. I mean, a lot of people didn't. I would have loved to see like a little bit, maybe like a day before type of thing, where everything is normal, quote unquote, and Anya got to just be cool. Like, all of the lore I find about Anya is incredibly sad, but also some of the lore of like her conversations with Daisuke, or her relationship with Daisuke, the fact that they love to do a little bit of family game night. I love that. I wish we had more of that. Obviously not for the sake of the narrative, but like I wish we did. So when people draw fan art or memes of that, I think it's totally fine and okay to do, because we didn't get that in canon, and it's nice to see Anya happy for once. Like, please look at this tweet that one of the devs reposted on Twitter. And now please look at the tweet directly after it. We can do both, I promise. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you did, you are a real one. Like I said, I was not able to get to everything, so if you have something to say about something that I missed or something that I said, please comment down below. This is a conversation. And hey, if you want any more analyses like this out of me, go ahead and watch my Alien stage video. I kind of recap it and then also talk about like really, again, scratching the surface of the analysis there just to get the springboard going. That is a video that I'm really proud of, and you should go watch it. But also, like, I feel like there's so much there that I really only scratched the level. So if you want more of that as well, go over there and let me know over there as well. So thank you so much for watching, and hey, I will see you in the next episode. Love and peace.